probably scared Jamie back there 'cause couldn't hear me. I hadn't flipped on the body pack. We're beginning a new series. We got through our series, Passed Through the Cross. The title of this series is Runaways. You know, I kind of wanted to start the service by singing, you know that song, Sometimes I Feel Like... No. See, I can't sing it well. That's why I didn't start it that way. But Runaways. You know, back in the 1950s, that was a great time for Westerns, right? You had Gene Autry, you had Roy Rogers and his famous horse Trigger, right? And you had Tonto and his sidekick, the Lone Ranger, right? Hey, I'm in the heart of Cherokee Nation. It's Tonto and his sidekick, the Lone Ranger, as far as I'm concerned, right? I don't want no arrows flying up at me this morning. But all of those guys, a lot of those stories would hinge around someone or a horse or a stagecoach getting away, right? Or maybe even a train. It would be out of control. And Tonto would ride up alongside that stagecoach, and he goes, Indian not jumping on that thing. That's like a death wish. So he would make the Lone Ranger jump on the stagecoach, right? And he would get it under control. And everything would be good. The day would be saved. They'd ride off into the sunset. Of course, Lone Ranger didn't have a girlfriend that we knew about, so he would never kiss the girl or anything. Just leave him with the silver bullet as a memento, right? I don't know about you, but I'd love to have one of those silver bullets today because the price of silver, I have a feeling, is going to go up. So I'd like to have one of those bad boys. But Runaways, they make for a good storyline. You know, God has runaways in the Bible. Well, why in the world would God put runaways in the Bible? If running away is something that can be bad or if it's out of control, why would God put it in the Bible? Well, I think he did it so that we could identify with some of the people that God would later use in their life to do some amazing things. You know, all of us at one point in time in our lives have probably run away. Whether it's running away from problems or issues, whether we're running away so we can chase after a dream that seems to be out there. Some of us are trying to run away from being an adult, right? I just want to go back to taking naps, you know, and snacks. Man, life would be so much better with naps and snacks, right? Yeah, all of us, yeah. In Genesis 27, we're going to look at our first runaway today, Jacob. And we see the story of Jacob. We're going to pick it up where Isaac is old and gray. If you don't know, Abraham was promised a son. You know, when he was old age, when Sarah was in her 90s, they finally had Isaac. Isaac had two boys, Jacob and Esau. And here's where we pick up the story. Isaac is near the end of his life. In Genesis chapter 27, it reads like this. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, he called Esau, his older son, to him. My son, he answered, here am I, or here I am. He said, behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me, that I may eat, and that my soul may bless you before I die. Right here, I love Isaac. The command, get your bow, get your quiver, and go out and hunt. Me being a hunter, I love that command. Go out and get some good food. I was talking to someone got a turkey on youth season. How many youth got a turkey on youth season? I didn't take my son out. Justice isn't here, is he? Man, Justice got a turkey. Man, that's good eating. If you know how to prepare it, it really is good eating. But he said, go get me some of that good food to eat. Now, it seems like a pretty good request. Esau's the older son. He's the one that was born first. The birthright should go to Esau. It should be passed on along to him. Uh-oh. Is that me running out of juice? It's not? Okay. I was going to say I can change out if I need to. Esau was the oldest. It only makes sense that it should be passed down to him, the birthright. That's the way it went. It's still that way today a lot of times. If you have a family business, if you're an older guy, you want to pass it down to your family, and usually you hope to pass it down to the oldest. That was the tradition. But in this story, there were circumstances that said that Esau wasn't supposed to get that birthright. He wasn't supposed to get the special place of being the leader of the clan. Notice back in Genesis chapter 25. You can put your finger there, flip back a page or two. But in Genesis 25:23, the Lord said to her, the Lord said to Rebekah, Rebecca was having one of those pregnancy days. I can't tell you what that feels like because I've never been pregnant, okay? I can tell you what it's like being around a pregnant woman when the babies are getting big or baby's getting big. My wife and I, we haven't had twins, so I can't tell you what that's like. But she had twins, and she was having a bad day, and she cried out to God, and she's like, God, what is going on? And God responded. It says, and the Lord said to her, Genesis 25:23, 2 nations are in your womb. Well, that explains it. Here I thought I had little babies growing. There's actually nations in my womb. Well, okay. And the 2 people from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. Notice this. And the older shall serve the younger. So, as Rebecca's crying out to God, God, it feels like there is a cage match going on in my stomach. A no holds bar. They're jumping off the top of the cage match going on in my stomach. God says, yeah, there is, because that's what's going on in your stomach. Them boys is fighting like boys do. And he tells her, hey, the younger one, he's going to be the winner. He's going to be the one that leads the family. And you know what Rebecca did, because every woman who has knowledge that her husband doesn't know loves to share that knowledge with her husband, right? It goes something like this. I found out something you don't know, right? So I'm sure Isaac knew about that. If that wasn't enough, if God telling Rebekah that the older will serve the younger, we have another story in Genesis 25. Notice in verses 29 through 24. Once Jacob was cooking stew. Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, let me have some of that red stew, for I am exhausted. Jacob said, sell me your birthright now. Esau said, I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? Jacob said, swear to me now. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and he drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Did you catch that? Esau is the one to blame for this. Esau despised his birthright. Now, there's all sorts of morals we could get from this passage. I'm sure you've heard pastors preach on this passage alone about forfeiting your future for something that's fleeting, something that's in front of you. But this is about Jacob. I want you to notice how shrewd of a businessman Jacob was, right? He said, he's hungry, sell me your birthright. And then Jacob, being the loving, kind brother that he is, once he had his brother's birthright, once he had the right to lead the clan, notice what he did. He didn't just give him a pot of lentils. That's what those were, by the way. Lentils. Lima beans. How many of you love lima bean soup? Good. No. Now, if there's beans and cornbread and some ham in there, now we got something cooking. Both now and later, right? Yeah. But notice this. Jacob, being the loving guy that he is, not only gives him a bowl of beans, but he throws in the whole meal deal, right? He says, since you're such a good customer, Esau, I'm going to supersize your order. We're going to give you some bread and some wine as well. Right? What a nice guy. No. He took advantage of his brother being out hard at the hunt, didn't have anything. If you've been a hunter or fisherman, you know there's going to be days like this. The difference is when you're fishing, you're sitting down or you're in a boat. When you're hunting, you're usually covering land trying to find that turkey or that deer or that quail or pheasant or whatever you're hunting and get the shot on him. He was exhausted. Jacob took advantage of him. There's a lesson to be learned here as well. Satan likes to take sin, and he likes to wrap it up in the beauty of things. For Esau, don't be mad at him. Boy was hungry. He was a manly man. He didn't care about the future right now. He was hungry now. But Satan likes to take our wishes and our desires, and he takes that sin that will entrap us, and he wraps it up in a bunch of nice, good stuff so that we bite, and then you feel the hook. And that's what is about to happen here to Esau. He is about to feel the hook. Let's get back to Genesis 27. Let's get back to our story. Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare it for me delicious food that I may eat and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now, therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, so that I may prepare it for them delicious food for your father, such as he loves, and you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies. Now, I did leave out one little part back in Genesis 25. Back in Genesis 25, it literally says in the Bible that Esau was Isaac's favorite. So Jacob, being the baby of the family, guess whose favorite he was? Yeah. So Rebekah overhears all of this. And she says, Jacob, you're the one. God said you're supposed to be the one. So she doesn't see how God is going to work this out. So she does what we probably would do. Hey, God, I know you've got a plan. You've given it to me in the Bible. The whole world is supposed to come to repentance. So I'm going to charter a plane. I'm taking a bunch of my friends up there who I know don't know you. I'm going to hang them out of the airplane and hold on to them and say, either you're going to accept Jesus or I'm going to let you go, right? That'd get them to turn or burn, right? They got a decision. You know, that would be extreme, but that's what Rebekah's doing. God's already showed her his plan. She can't see how God is going to work that plan out. So she says, I'm going to help God. So she goes and gets 2 little goats. Hey, I can take that meat and I can make it taste like that animal that Esau was going to go kill. And Jacob goes, yeah, but Esau's a manly man. You know, I work around the kitchen. She goes, I'll take care of that. And she took some of the skin off those goats and put it on his arm. And she took a robe out of Esau's tent and put it on top of Jacob, because Jacob, you know, he smelled like garlic and parsley and stuff. And Esau smelled like the woods, you know. But it works. Isaac is fooled. The blessing is given to Jacob. So let me ask you something. What do you think is going to happen when Esau, the man with the weapons who went out to hunt tasty food to eat, what do you think when big, hairy, manly man Esau gets back to the tent and he finds out that his birthright is gone? After he spent all of those hours hunting down that animal, then he went through the kind of the gross part of hunting, of gutting that animal and preparing it for food and bringing it to his dad. How do you think Esau's going to feel? Yeah, upset to say the least, right? Genesis 27, verse 41. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for mourning my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. A normal response, right? He's hurt. He's angry. He's been deceived. He's been swindled. I'm sure at this moment he forgets about giving away his birthright. Maybe he thought, oh, that was just talk so I could get some beans and some food because I was hungry. Well, just like you thought you were deceiving Jacob, Jacob was deceiving you, and I guess Jacob won. So Rebekah overhears all of this. And she tells Jacob, you need to get out of here. Your big, hairy, weapon-toting brother is out to kill you. You need to leave. I'm going to send you to my brother Laban's. And I want you to go there, and I want you to find a wife. So why is Jacob on the run? Well, you just told us, Pastor. Big, hairy, weapon-toting, manly man Esau is chasing mama's boy Jacob. Well, I didn't say mama's boy. You did, but that's up to you. But remember back earlier that God had revealed to Rebekah that Jacob was supposed to have the blessing? Well, wasn't she just following God's plan? No, she was trying to make God's plan happen her way. And that's not what it's about. And because she tried to make God's plan happen her way, Jacob is now on the run. So why was Jacob running? Why do we run? Well, first of all, I think he was running, and I think we run because we're weaker. Because we're weaker. Who do you think is going to win that match? I guess if the little boy is nimble enough, he can go between his legs and try and outlast the big old guy, right? But when we are up against people or circumstances that seem to be stronger than us, that seem to be bigger than us, it's only natural that we're going to say, hey, I'm not doing this. What's that saying? He who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. In this case, he who runs away. I don't know if I'd even try and fight, because if he slips and falls on him, we're in trouble. He who runs away lives to fight another day. It's just in us that when we come against something that is so big, that is so powerful, whether it's of our own doing or whether it's of something we're up against in our lives, man, I can't see how I'm going to conquer this. I can't see how I'm going to do this, so I'm running away. Jacob was facing a huge problem here, and it was a problem, true, of his own making. Well, Mama told me to. We'll get to that in a minute. Jacob still decided to deceive. He was facing an obstacle. He was facing his brother who was bigger than him, and he decided, I'm going to run. Point 2. Why do we run? Well, because he or we have been dishonest. We've been dishonest. Man, that's a tough one. Jacob's name literally means heel catcher or supplanter. See, when the twins were born, Esau came out, and Jacob was holding on to Esau's heel. And the idea of that word kind of carries the idea of a trickster, or the one that, he kind of is trying to pull someone else down to his level. We've already discussed the two incidents of Jacob with Esau, but later on, Jacob, when he goes to the faraway land to find his wife, he runs into his uncle Laban. And I think Jacob finds the person from which he gained his character, because Laban was a world-class used camel salesman. I mean, a world-class, only has 2 legs, used camel salesman. He'd sell that sucker. Because what he did is he got Jacob to work 14 years for a wife that he promised him after 7 years. See, Jacob ran into someone that knew the game better than him. But God was faithful to Jacob. He told Jacob that he would bless him, and he did. Even though Laban was trying to snooker Jacob, even though Laban was dealing from the bottom of the deck, God still blessed Jacob. And when Jacob left, he left with a family that was growing. He left with herds that were large, almost as large as Laban's. That's one of the points of contention why he had to leave. But how do we act around someone who either we've been dishonest with or who is being dishonest with us? How do we act around those people? Is it all free and open and lovey-dovey? No. We act with caution. We watch our words. We watch our phrases. Why? Because trust has been broken. We know that what they're telling us isn't exactly what they mean. They've got an end game behind the flattery. They've got an end game behind the deal, and we have to be careful. Jacob ran from Esau because he played deceitful with him. We find that Jacob now runs from Laban because Laban had been deceitful with him. Another reason we run, because our mama says to. Well, but you don't understand, Pastor. I got into this situation, and I sought counsel from my dear old friend, and you know what he told me? He told me to run. He told me it was okay to skip town, to not pay the debt, to not pay the bill. And so I did. I did exactly what he told me. See, whenever we get caught in something, we're real good at blame shifting, right? At BSing. We're good at it. We'll shift the blame to something else. We'll blame someone else. That's what happened in the garden. Adam was caught. It's the woman. Eve, what'd you do? It's the serpent. Serpent, what'd you do? You put the tree in the garden, God. Now, we aren't recorded on that, but that only makes sense that we pass on down the blame. We get real good at it. When we get in trouble, we seek advice, and we know who to go to. We know the person that's going to tell us what we want to hear, don't we? So we avoid the good wisdom. We want to hear what we want to hear. Jacob went and got advice from Rebekah. Rebekah said, you need to run. I don't want you to die, son. And then Rebekah tried to cover up that advice by saying, oh, by the way, I don't want you to find a wife of these pagans where we live, so I'm going to send you to my brother Laban for you to find a wife. She tried to cover up the cover-up, right? Isn't that what always happens? Once we start telling a story and we can't remember what we said, we've got to keep retelling it in a different way. God says in his word that those things that are done in dark or done in secret will be exposed. And he will bring to light all the things that seem to be hidden in darkness. And I know that's true. How do I know it's true? Because I'm a sinner who tries to walk with God. And when I try and get away with things, God eventually brings my sin either to my attention, or if I don't want to deal with it, he brings it to someone else's attention, and it has to be dealt with. Why? Because he loves us. So you may say, how can all of this mess that Jacob has fallen into? He can't hang around his family. He's ticked off Esau. Isaac's probably dead by now, so anything that his father would have said, hold back Esau, that restraint's gone. So what is there for Jacob? He's leaving Laban. Laban's done him wrong. He needs to get away from him. Where does Jacob go? Well, eventually, he turns to God. But what Jacob does first is he sets his heart back toward home. He says, I'm going to go back to the land of my father. And as he's going toward the land of his father, word comes down through the caravan that, hey, Esau's just up the way. Jacob, being the thinker, being the swindler, being the con man, how am I going to get out of this? So he comes up with a plan. He says, I'm going to put all of my kids and my wives and all of my family and some of my herds, I'm going to send them ahead of me to greet Esau. And I hope when Esau finds out he's an uncle and how good all of his little nephews and nieces are, he's going to leave me alone, right? Why not? It's worth a shot. He can't go back to Laban. Laban's mad. One of his wives took one of the idols from her dad when she left, and Laban caught up to him, and they had a big old blew out about that. So he can't go back. He's got to keep pressing forward after he sent everyone ahead. When he's all alone, God comes to deal with Jacob. Notice in Genesis chapter 32, verses 24 through 28, and then verse 30. He says when Jacob was left alone. That's when God likes to deal with us. That's why it's good, guys, if you hunt or fish, to get alone sometimes, because God likes to talk to us when we're alone. He says, and when he was left alone, a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, let me go, for the day is broken. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. Then he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with man and have prevailed. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. Jacob wrestled all night with God. Even after he touched his hip. I've never had a hip out of place. I've told that is the worst, most painful injury you can have. I know through self-defense training, if you shoot someone in the whole waist area, there's a lot of veins, there's a lot of nerves in there. If you shoot someone there, they're not going to want to fight, okay? So I know there's a lot of pain in there, but Jacob still held on. Jacob was a supplanter. He was a swindler. He was a heel catcher. He was a leech on society, if you will. But he wasn't going to give up or let go of God until God blessed him. And what was God's response? Jacob, the guy who's running away from problems, from his past, from his future, he had nowhere to go. He's heading back to his family. How did God reach down and bring Jacob back? Well, God changed his name. You ever wanted to change your name? Credit score's bad, school's bad, whatever it is. Man, if I could just change my name. If I was like James Bond and had all these aliases, or not James Bond, what is it? Mission Impossible, or what? Born Supremacy. There's another one. There's a dude that always got different faces, isn't it? Man, if I could just change, have a different passport, have a new life, things would be better. But that's exactly what God did. See, sometimes we run our lives so far aground that we have to have a new identity, and that's what God does for us. Get this. Paul said, if anyone is in Christ, he is what? A new creation. He doesn't say that you're a repurposed creation, right? He says you are what? New. So if I go up to the store, go up to the Ford dealership, and I buy a 2015 F-150 Raptor. Awesome truck, right? And the guy says, this is a brand new truck. It's only got 5,000 miles on it. Is that a brand new truck? No. Well, it hasn't left the lot. We just drove it around. No. If I go in there and I buy a brand new Raptor and it's got 6 miles on it because it had to be loaded and moved around, that's a brand new truck, right? That's a brand. We are a new creation. I think we forget that sometimes because we've been walking with God for a while, or we can't understand how God can take my messed up life and I truly can have a new life. But Paul says we are a new creation. No longer are we seen as outcasts. Jacob, you are no longer called Jacob. You are now called Israel. You are now called the father of many nations. God takes those drastic steps to show us his love for us. No longer, as we're studying in Galatians on Wednesday night, no longer are we nameless slaves or servants, but we are now called children of God. When we've been running, when our lives seem to be so messed up, God says, I've got the answer. The answer isn't for you to fix everything. The answer is for me to come in and make you new. And only God can do that. What are we running from today? I don't know what's going on in your life, but I know what the answer is. Are you willing to stop and grab a hold of God? Have you ever wrestled with God all night? Have you ever had a kid who was sick and you don't know the outcome? Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's you. God, I don't know what you're doing. My life seems to be falling apart. I seem to get one thing straightened out and another thing falls apart. Have you ever wrestled with God all night? Have you ever had the tenacity to hang on to God until he shows you the answer? Grab on. He has a special plan for your life. I don't know what that plan is. Your parents can do their best, but they don't know what that plan is because it's a personal relationship between you and God. Only as you grab a hold of him and get into his word and spend time in prayer and grow and find out who he is, will you find out his plan for your life. In John 6:37, Jesus states, whoever comes to me, I will in no wise cast out. Have you come to Jesus? Have you said, Jesus, I can't get to heaven on my own. I've done some good things in my life, but man, I've got these sins. They may not be as bad as that person's or this person's, but I've got some sins, and that's all it takes to keep you out of heaven. Have you come to Jesus and said, I can only get to heaven through you? Maybe you have come to Jesus. Maybe you've accepted him as your Savior. But like Jacob, man, there's some deceitful things that have been going on, or there's things in your past you're running from. Maybe you're trying to find your future. Either circumstance, running past, trying to run ahead, holding on to God is still the way we find purpose and meaning in our life. Holding on to God is how we find restoration back from the dung heap that we have taken our life and placed it on. Are you willing to wrestle with God? Are you willing to stop running and just hold on? Let's have a word of prayer. Father, this morning as we've looked at our first runaway, all of us, if we're honest, at some point in our life we've run away. There are circumstances, there are things we don't want to face. Sometimes if we face them, we have to face things about ourselves, that we've wronged someone, that we've lied, that we've stolen, that we're not being honest about our intentions or about what's going on in our life. The Bible tells us that like sheep, we have all turned to our own direction. And yet as we study today, you are still there, waiting, wanting us to come home. And you don't just take our broken pieces and then try and make something different out of it, but it says that you make us a new creation. Only you are be able to take what we have and not just make it better, God, but you give us a whole new life. I pray this morning, Father, if there's someone here who hasn't found that new life in you by confessing their sin and accepting what Jesus did on the cross for them, I pray that they don't leave here this morning without doing that. But then, Father, even as Christians, as we begin our walk, we still live in a fallen world. Even though we've been given this new life, even though we've been given this new name and this new calling, man, like Rachel, we like to try and make your will happen. And maybe we've broken some relationships. Maybe we've wandered outside of your plan, and we've tried our plan and then tried to slap your name on it. You're still wanting us to come home. You're still there. Father, I pray today that wherever we are in our life, even if we think our walk is good, that, Father, that we are tenacious like Jacob, and we grab hold of you, and we say, we're not going to let go. We're not going to leave our prayer room. We're not going to leave our devotions until you bless us and show us the way. Jesus showed us, not my will, but yours. May your will be done in this time of invitation. In your name we pray. Amen. I invite you to stand.